Each episode of the Blind Alchemy Podcast is designed to be helpful. Expect comedy. Do not expect consistency or sense to be made. I am Podbot. I was inspired by the Lion Good podcast. Listen to that show. Today's episode continues the interview with philosopher Buck Johnson and the discussion of the seventh hermetic principle of gender.
Hello and welcome to the Blind Alchemy Podcast. I am your host, the Blind Alchemist, and I am coming at you live from the kitchen with this rendition of reality as we know it. We are all one, and there is nothing new under the sun that shines down here upon the island of mind, which is somewhere adrift in the sea of frequency that creates all of reality. You see, we are connected through this energy. Now, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Today, with me, we have Buck Johnson.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Our resident
How's it going, Blind Alchemist? How you doing today?
wannabe philosopher.
Hey now.
How you doing over there?
I mean, I was doing well until you called me a wannabe. I don't know that I even want to be a philosopher. Honestly, I think I've just been saddled with it.
Well, I used the wrong descriptatory. Let me say this. I think it's armchair philosopher. I think that's what I'm going to go with.
You like that better?
Yeah, I do like
You can call me whatever you want, man. I don't care.
Okay. All right, Buck. What are we doing today? We're doing the seventh hermetic principle, the final seventh topic of the hermetic list. Yeah. Also,
Perfect time.
yeah. We're also going to have some dog barking during the show.
Can you keep the interns at bay today?
No, I'm going to try my best. You know, the dog barking gives those fine folks over at Hairline Productions something to do. I think they do a fabulous job. What about you, Ted? Okay. All right. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Please stop measuring your penis. Okay.
Oh, Ted's in fine form today, huh?
Yeah, he's on one.
Measuring his phallus. How you been, Blind Alchemist? How's everything
Oh,
going?
I am well.
Everything good there on the island of mind?
Yeah, so far so good. We got all our technical difficulties worked out, and we're trying to straighten up and fly right. We're getting back to the show with Buck Johnson. We're seventh hermetic principle, the principle of gender.
Gender is everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The kybalion. And it goes on to talk a little bit about how gender embodies the truth. There's gender manifested in everything. The masculine and feminine principles are ever present and active in all phases of phenomena in each and every plane of life. At this point, we think it well to call your attention to the fact that gender, in its hermetic sense, and sex, in the ordinarily accepted use of the term, are not the same. It says gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. At a moment's consideration, we'll show you that the word has a much broader and more general meaning than the term sex. The latter referring to the physical distinctions between the male and female living things. Sex is merely a manifestation of gender on a certain plane of the great physical plane, the plane of organic life. We wish to impress this distinction upon your minds for the reason that certain writers who have acquired a smattering of the Hermetic philosophy have sought to identify this seventh Hermetic principle with wild and fanciful and often reprehensible theories and teachings regarding sex.
Well, we're not going to talk about that on the show because I think we get enough innuendo in about sex. So, especially with Ted in the booth doing whatever he's doing in there with all those water balloons. All right.
Whoa.
I,
Is that a electricity test, maybe? Maybe
it gets weird around here. Maybe he's working on his own gender energy theory over there with those water balloons.
conducting experiments on vibration.
Yeah. All right, now back to the point. If there ever was one.
We did talk about the marbles in the balloon and how the vibration's different the more marbles you have. But I don't think that Ted has really paid much attention to our episodes.
I don't think that's really what he's, no.
So what do you think about this principle of gender? Do you feel like there's gender in everything? Do you feel like everything represents masculine and feminine? I think they go on further to talk about how these are more like negative and positive, or
Yep.
cathodes and anodes. And
Yep. Think of it as positive male being energetic push or electric push, and negative feminine being magnetic pull.
And then there's that later discussion of how the female or the negative is actually sort of the directional birthplace. It goes on to discuss how the female is the progenitor in some ways, as opposed to the masculine being the progenitor.
I think whichever way is necessary to generate the right kind of spin, because I think those two energy forces being what they are, electric push and magnetic pull, and they'll hit each other and they'll start swirling around. And I think that's how everything just sticks together. There's gravity. I figured it out right here, live on the Blind Alchemy. That's what we do here. We're flying by the seat of our pants here, Buck.
Okay.
If Ted would stop. Now there's Vaseline in there. Stop, Ted. I don't, at least pull the shades down. Damn, Ted, I don't want to see that. Thank you.
So you were saying the positive and negative are intertwined. Are you thinking of the idea of like the yin and yang?
Yeah. The energetic push, the magnetic pull, they come together and create electromagnetic force, which spins in either a positive or negative way, where there's just more polarity, more gender, and the atoms spin, and then the next layer spins. Never mind, I'm confusing myself.
Okay.
I do not at this moment have the words to articulate that thought.
Okay.
And let that be a reminder, folks, not every thought needs to come out of your damn mouth.
Well, they do talk about how the law of gravitation, they say, and more than this, can you not see the reasonableness of the Hermetic teachings which assert that the very law of gravitation, that strange attraction by reason of which all particles and all bodies of matter in the universe tend toward each other, is but another manifestation of the principle of gender, which operates in the direction of attracting the masculine to the feminine energies, and vice versa.
Yeah.
We cannot offer you scientific proof of this at this time, but examine the phenomena in the light of the Hermetic teachings on the subject, and see if you have not a better working hypothesis than any offered by physical science. And I think they're saying that, like this principle of attractiveness, or attraction or cohesion between molecules of matter, gravitation, the strong and weak forces, are maybe in at least a simile like the terms of feminine and masculine, in that they're attracted to each other, or they have coordinating powers of attraction, like you're suggesting in your, maybe coordinated is not the right term. What I mean to say is similar but on the opposite polarity scale of each other. If you think of positive and negative as opposites which attract each other, it somehow is not quite accurate with what electromagnetism would define as the difference of those two different ionic charges. Not so much that they necessarily attract each other as that things that are in a state of non-homogeneity, things that are in states of where there's a concentration of one charge versus a concentration of a different charge, they want to reach an equilibrium, and so that those different charged particles, if you will, they want to displace each other in their retrospective environments so that there's not a surplus of one charge over, if that makes sense.
Yeah, attempting to create balance.
Yeah, I think that's like a natural.
Maybe that's the trip right there. It's all about the balance of the positive and negative forces.
I think so. And I think maybe that's just the displacement that is occurred by natural entropy in action that is leading to that equilibrium or that drive towards equilibrium. But this is different than, say, sexuality or the principles of sexuality.
Yeah. That doesn't really apply here on the energy level because, I think it's just the push and the pull being male and female.
So what do you think that means in this scale or in the scope of Hermeticism? Let's talk more about what is masculinity or femininity in the mindset of Hermeticism. How do these two different things differ? How do they interact? What do you think about that?
That's a mighty subject. It's going to take a little while to gather all those thoughts in that basket and organize them into cohesion.
Well, that's what we're here to do, right?
Well, yeah.
Break it down for me, Alchemist. How do you see these things? What do you feel about them?
It's a push and a pull and a rotation. Everything is apparently rotating, especially here in the physical plane. Your planet, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe even. Probably the next couple of multiverses they're spinning. Is everything spinning on a quantum level too? Because I think these principles, in theory, apply on all levels. The physical level, the emotional, mental, spiritual. They all work on the same levels. It's a structured archetype and an algorithm, if you will. And it's the same program running on all levels. And then each level's building on itself and becoming more and more dense. And that's how we get from the top to the bottom, the spiritual to the physical.
Okay.
I don't even know if anything I just said made sense. And I got Ted over here telling me it doesn't. But I don't think I can trust his opinion.
Well, I think in concept, it certainly makes sense that Hermeticism is trying to apply these different principles on these different planes that it claims exist. And it's trying to apply them from the macro to the micro scale. I believe that's what you just said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right, Ted. I should eat a thesaurus and a dictionary. Yeah. Fuck you, man. Vocab, you gotta have vocab.
Well, but the kybalion talks about feminine corpuscles and masculine corpuscles. Do you think that's like a molecular corpuscle? Is that what it means by corpuscle when it talks about latest scientific teachings are that the creative corpuscle or electrons are feminine? And
What's the date on that printing?
on the kybalion printing, this release date is November 29, 2004 as an ebook. It's Study of the Hermetic Philosophy of Ancient Egypt and Greece, the Kybalion. 1912. The copyright was 1912. Yeah, so
There you go. Yeah.
that's right in line with what I would expect with their use of the term corpuscle and, where they talk about the ether and things like that, because
Yeah.
it was just within that decade and the following decade where all of that was pretty much thrown out by science. All of these ideas of,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking about how in the concept of the masculine and feminine, the cathode and anode had recently changed. Yeah, so that seems right as far as the timing of this sort of philosophy. Because, after relativity...
It's just an adjective for a process that...
An adjective for a process? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
What's an adjective for a process? What do you mean?
That particular corpuscles. At the time, 1912, that was their understanding, the best way to describe the process. Maybe it functions like corpuscles. Yeah, you're right, Ted. Let's learn together, asshole. Let's look up corpuscles.
Yeah, I think...
Let's break it down, because you know how I like to do on the show. Get the definition, get the etymology. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Let's do it.
Sure. I think of corpuscle in a biological term, referring to blood.
That's what I was thinking, too.
So in biology, corpuscle is defined as a minute body or cell in an organism, especially a red or white cell in the blood of vertebrates. Historically, corpuscle meant a minute particle regarded as the basic constituent of a matter or light. It's a subparticle at the center of antimony. Corpuscles are fluid and volatile. So, now we speak of light in the form of photons, and we say that photon can bear the resemblance to either a wave or a particle, depending on how you're looking at it. If you look at it as going through a specific region of space. We like to think of it in the form of a wave, but when we like to measure it at a specific point in time or a specific velocity, we like to think of it in the form of a particle. But it seems, ironically, both the aspects of a particle and a wave at the same time.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
Photons can bear the resemblance to either a wave or a particle depending on how you're looking at it, because we can only predict where it might be with probabilities rather than really being able to measure it very accurately. We do have some amazing ways to very specifically measure specific photons, photon guns, where we can generate photons. So that is quite a big difference in our understandings of electromagnetic waves and electromagnetic radiation than they had at the time of 1912, Thinking of these things and these ideas of corpuscles, I think that's really prior to the discovery of any subatomic particles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they had the concept of photon, and they probably had the concept of molecules, but I don't think that they really differentiated with the term corpuscle. I think corpuscle is one of these terms that's used to refer to many different possible things. Would you agree with that?
Yes, that was a very long-winded explanation of an adjective for a process. Thank you. I'm glad you're on the show, Buck. You're here, you're taking charge. I love you.
Always happy to be here, man.
You just call it the Buck Johnson Show. Buck Johnson Show.
What are you talking about?
Sit right down, put your feet on the floor. I said it's about time for the
Blind Alchemy
show. We're gonna speak our hearts, we're gonna bare our souls. Say it's about time for the
Blind Alchemy
show, yeah.
No, I mean, you're on top of your stuff today, man.
I'm happy
You're on
to
your
be
stuff
here.
today.
I'm trying to bring it. It's nothing. Buck Johnson will say.
Yeah, well, you don't. I feel like you're trying to force it sometimes.
Ted, edit that out. Buck Johnson will never say I'm on it.
You just gotta relax. You gotta let me relax. You gotta let the alchemy happen. It's a magical flow. You're trying to rush a formulated process. I think we need to slow down, change gears.
We should deep dive on this episode on gender because we didn't really get into it enough. Ride the wave.
Yeah. Get the board out. Climb aboard the Isle of Mind and set sail with us across the seas of frequency with no real destination in sight because we're letting the sea guide us. This is probably a piss poor way to drive a boat. You're right, Ted. Yeah. And Ted is rapidly becoming my antagonist. Why are you so critical, Ted? I don't care that your mother hit you with a fucking stick for 5 hours one day. Yesterday, your mother's 85 years old. You should have just pushed her away. Fuck you. I'm sorry. We're bringing Ted in here. I'm sorry. This is a Buck Johnson episode. It was supposed to be important about gender. You're over here with the kybalions.
It sounds like Ted's mother is also getting into some sort of intoxicating substances referred to in the past.
No, well, it's oftentimes addiction is generational.
Hereditary?
Heretical. You're right, Ted. That is not the right word at all. Just, relax, Ted.
I mean, if you have that kind of feminine influence, like the feminine is beating you with a stick for 5 hours, that would definitely influence my revolutionary plan.
I think it's not really about sex. It may be about physical sex, the acts of intercourse on this level because of, the push and the pull, penis and vagina. And that's all. We're going to put a comma there. The statement is made. We're going to go on. Okay.
Ted's mother and Ted's penis have anything to do with each other? I was just talking about...
No, I damn, I hope not. Jesus. Oh, God. That's maybe...
I was just talking about how Ted's mother beating him with a stick would change if I had that kind of feminine influence in my life. I wasn't even thinking about the
Well,
sexuality of the two. But I guess sex does come into play there. I mean, from generation to generation. So let's think about this.
let's unpack it. Let's get to the bottom of it, because we're not doing anything.
Why are they using the words masculine and feminine? Why do they bring gender into this concept of reality if they say it has nothing to do with sex? Are they just making an observation of the larger world around them and saying, every kind of animal shows some sort of gender, so the universe itself must show some sort of gender? What's really going into this? Why even bring gender into a description of physical reality if it's not just a reflection on the biological sexes?
I think it goes to part of the polarity. The physical plane has to have polarity, has to have polar opposites for there to be degrees in the inner electromagnetic spin, I think. That's just a theory and a thought that I have.
Yeah, so is it just a matter of self-reflection? Because we as humans have males and females, and we like to think, I think we've had some discussion of this in our previous discussions, but I don't know if it was in this Hermetic Principle series, but there's certainly other ways of reproduction in the universe. Other species don't have male or female, or species that exhibit both male and female, like frogs or lizards. And there's probably more things that exist in the world that asexually reproduce and things that have sexual reproduction. I know we're not bringing sexuality into it, but I'm simply saying that if we're talking about the transpiration of energy from one form to another or from one place to another, if gender in this discussion is about the exchange of two different energetic forces, or exchange of ions seems to be the thing in the world that pushes matter forward through time. If we imagine explosions on the sun, which cause that energy to travel out into the universe and warm or some other way energetically interact with other particles in the universe. And it's that interaction of particles that causes gravitation, or the pulling together of matter to form other matter, or that entropy of the universe, which is the expansion of all these different electromagnetic waves. And that, I mean, we can't deny the fact that there is that exchange between these different forms of energy. But it just seems to me that I don't know. I don't know why it's gender that they chose. Maybe that was before they kind of had these concepts of electricity, and that just seemed to apply because it was self-reflective. Them looking at themselves and saying, well, we have gender, so there must be gender in the universe. I don't know if I see gender as something that must exist for reproduction or the continuance of entropy.
Yeah, on the physical level, it only applies to reproduction, I think. Right?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? If we think strictly biologically, then gender plays a role in the transference of genes from one generation to the next. I guess the reason why we sort of theorize that we have these different genders is because it leads to greater genetic diversity. If a male and a female reproduce with each other and they share their genes with each other, then we have an exchange of different genes, which leads to a greater genetic diversity in the next generation, which leads to more adaptation based on the exposition of those genes and evolution. But, evolution is generally looked at in a retrospective way, not in a present time viewpoint. And, many people might argue that evolution or adaptation or genetic diversity is really just the exposure of entropy. It's really just like energy trying to make itself move to a different place or in a different form, or from one surplus to a different environment that doesn't have that surplus.
Why is it that energy has to be on the move? What do you think that is? Where's it going? Why is it in such a hurry? Why are we in such a hurry? Who's got the foot on the gas?
I think that is one of the greatest questions. Why does energy have to go from one place to another? It seems like that is the only thing that is possibly true. If we ask all the questions and we want to find a simple answer, not that we need a simple answer, but one of the most apparent simple answers that one can observe is that energy moves. Energy moves from one location to another. And I don't know, I suppose the answer is reflected in this concept of the Hermetic principle of gender, where it talks about how the feminine and the masculine represent these different ionic states of energy, and that those energy states want to exchange themselves. But what that's all about, I think they're referring to things like, why does oxygen and hydrogen, when placed together, create water? Well, it's because the oxygen has too many ionic charges on it, and the hydrogen, in that exchange of electronic ionization, it forms these molecular bonds that create water molecules, which is a more stable state at a specific temperature and a specific concentration of each of those types of elements. And so, you know, there are these places in the universe where energy seems to pause its movement when it reaches a stable state. But all of that's for a temporary time being. All of energy seems to always constantly move from one state to another. That, to me, is the only truth of reality that we have been able to observe.
We are just electrical current floating in the wind. Well, we're going to change the lyrics to that Bob Dylan song. Can we rewind that, Ted? Can we rewind that without Ted? I'm talking. Ted, we'll get the damn fudge all off the buttons. I need you to work them. Can you rewind it? Playback, maybe? You know, something cool? No? Okay. Oh, that's good. Let's change the rewind. Wasn't it easier? Oh, what? Sorry, Buck. That train is lost and gone forever.
Thank you.
Ted, is that how you got fudge all over the buttons? Ted is rapidly becoming my inner critic. My biggest fan. Yeah, okay, you're right. You're my largest supporter. In a strange way, all this hateful screaming at me you've been doing is actually from a place of love, Ted. And I thank you. Thank you, Ted. I'm sorry, Buck. This has been a long time coming between me and Ted, and I'm sorry that you're here. Well, maybe it's a beautiful thing for you to witness the healing of the rift between host and engineer guy.
I wouldn't call it beautiful. I mean, I hope that you find tranquility in every phase, every moment of your life, Alchemist. That's all I can wish for you and Ted. I mean, Ted and I have had our disagreements in the past. I think that's clear, but...
Well, yeah. He did wreck your car.
I wish you nothing but well, Ted. I hope you find the peace in the moment that you deserve.
Yeah. Well, that's what this show's all about. Creating a better you, a better me.
Can I read you this portion of the kybalion and get your response to it? Because I found this sort of interesting.
Sure, go right ahead. Read it up.
It says, some leading scientific investigators have announced their belief that in the formation of crystals, there was to be found something that corresponded to sex activity, which is another straw showing the direction the scientific winds are blowing, and each year will bring other facts to corroborate the correctness of the Hermetic principle of gender. It will be found that gender is in a constant operation and manifestation in the field of inorganic matter and in the field of energy or force.
Maybe it's called the principle of gender, and the sex act applies because it's the process of creation, of generation.
Right.
Maybe that's why they explained it that way.
Okay. And there is that exchange and there is that vibration that's known to be found in all crystals. And they're just simply referring to the ionic transfer. Okay, so if we reduce it to that, anywhere that there's an ionic transfer, they're saying that it's that ionic transfer that can be related to gender expression and the principles of reality.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds good to me. What about you, Ted? We're not talking to you.
Has Ted now become a philosopher after editing so many episodes of this show? Is he becoming a philosopher as well?
I guess. He's throwing his hat in the ring. I don't know. Yeah, I know sometimes Buck is a little long-winded, Ted. You don't have to be an asshole. And I don't want... You can push that button, isn't it? That one? No, the one you got the white shit all over. That better be frosting.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, so Buck can actually hear you, so I don't have to hear you all the damn time. You can split earballs here, Ted. No, I mean, even outside of the recording studio here, Ted, you're in my head all the time. Like, you've broken me somehow, Ted. Okay, whatever, Ted. Well, I feel we're going to go off the rails soon. Maybe that's a direction we need to take. Maybe we need to get lost sometimes out here in the sea so you can find yourself. Remember, you can never find the light in the darkness without the darkness, right? You'll never grow without the darkness. And growth is the whole point, right? Figuring out the quintessential you. Is that the life process? Is that the spiritual process? I'm asking because I don't know. What are your thoughts on that there, Buckaroo?
Finding yourself is... Let's see if I can answer this question without being long-winded. It's difficult to answer questions about the relativeness of all of reality without being long-winded, but
yes, sometimes I find the starting point the hard thing.
I struggle with this concept of finding oneself because I think that the notion that there is a true story about the individual that captures the complexity of the individual and the somewhat whimsical nature of the mind and the interaction of all the gut microbiome with all of the many stimulants in the universe, which seems to control much of our behavior outside of our own minds. I think it's rather complex. The idea of what the self is, if we're talking about it on some sort of spiritual level, or we want to believe in the concept of the soul, or we want to believe in the concept of the influence of the all mental, that is like some expression of a reincarnated entity that might live within us, that is the puppet master of the puppet that is the meat body that we're all currently inhabiting, or if we want to think of the self as just the biological expression of the entropy of the atoms and molecules.
How about this? Could it be summed up in it is the balance between the higher self and the lower self, the carnal self and the spiritual self? Huh? I mean, I think that sums it up.
Well, maybe. I mean, I still struggle with these concepts of the higher self and the lower self, and these are sort of judgments that are based on morality, I guess.
These definitions are spiritual definitions, and you being a man of rocket science.
Well,
Spiritual stuff's not quantifiable yet, I mean, I think we're working on it.
Yeah, I'm not a direct materialist. I don't think that all of the principles of science wrap up reality in a nice, neat, tidy bow. But yet again, I would argue that's never been the objective of science, nor is that the true definition of science. Science just...
Wait, Dad, look up the etymology.
From the online etymology dictionary, science is a noun from the mid-14th century, meaning the state or fact of knowing. What is known? Knowledge of something, acquired by study. Information. Also assurance of knowledge, certitude, certainty. From 12th century, Old French, science meaning knowledge, learning, application. Or the corpus of human knowledge, from Latin scientia meaning knowledge, and knowing. Expertness, from sciens, genitive scientis, meaning intelligent, skilled. Also the present participle of scia meaning to know. The original notion in the Latin verb probably is to separate one thing from another, to distinguish, or else to incise. This is related to scindia, to cut, divide, from the Proto-Indo-European roots kymanein, to cut, split. source also of Greek skies to split, rend, cleave, the Gothic skaten, and the Old English sedden to divide, separate. The online etymology dictionary writes that the oldest English sense of the word now is restricted to theology and philosophy. From the late 14th century meaning, in English is book learning. Also, a particular branch of knowledge or of learning, systematized knowledge regarding a particular group of objects. Also, skillfulness, cleverness, craftiness. From the 14th century meaning, as experiential knowledge. Also, a skill resulting from training, handicraft, a trade. From late 14th century meaning, in the more specific sense of collective human knowledge, especially that gained by systematic observation, experiment, and reasoning. The modern, restricted, meaning of body of regular or methodical observations or propositions concerning a particular subject or speculation is attested by 1725. Between the 17th century to the 18th century, this commonly meant within the study of philosophy. The sense of non-nuts studies is attested from 1670s. The distinction is commonly understood as between theoretical truth, from the Greek episteme, and methods for effecting practical results, from the Greek techne. But science sometimes is used for practical applications and art for applications of skill. The predominant modern news, natural and physical science, it's generally restricted to study of the phenomena of the material universe and its laws, became popular in the mid-19th century. The scientific method is defined by the Encyclopedia Britannica Online as critical to the development of scientific theories, which explain empirical, therefore experiential laws, in a scientifically rational manner. In a typical application of the scientific method, a researcher develops a hypothesis, tests it through various means, and then modifies the hypothesis on the basis of the outcome of the tests and experiments. The modified hypothesis is then retested, further modified, and tested again, until it becomes consistent with observed phenomena and testing outcomes. In this way, hypotheses serve as tools by which scientists gather data. From that data and the many different scientific investigations undertaken to explore hypotheses, scientists are able to develop broad general explanations, or scientific theories. Science is defined by the Encyclopedia Britannica Online as any system of knowledge that is concerned with the physical world and its phenomena and that entails unbiased observations and systematic experimentation. In general, a science involves a pursuit of knowledge covering general truths or the operations of fundamental laws.
I've restated this several times.
Yeah, you seem to go around the same point. I think that's all we do here.
Well, maybe. But I think the self is temporary. That's the point I was trying to make. I was being long-winded. I apologize for that, and I thank you for your patience. Sometimes I have to think these things out in the real time, as you say, conduct the alchemy. To come up with the answer that you asked to the question, because maybe I haven't answered that question for myself today.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of thoughts in that basket, and you got to organize them. I understand.
Yeah. It's like this concept of gender. I think it's fine, and it's an easy way to
understand or explain a complicated process.
Yeah, I think that's the idea there, to speak in heuristics.
And I think that was the whole point of the entire Hermetic principles, was boiled down, condensed, an easy, simple explanation for an extremely complicated process. And how complicated is it? It's unfathomable. We can't think that big or that small or that deep. The human mind is not capable of such understanding. I think we can get close. We can get into the waiting room, but we'll never get in the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you think that they're still applicable, though? We talked about this was copyrighted 1912, and much of the science of the last century is left out of the understanding. Is there a modern version of Hermeticism that's still around today that exists outside of reflections of this published in 1912 version of a reaction to the kybalion? Is there any sort of new, or would you say that the Hermeticists, if they were alive today, if Newton was alive today,
is there an updated definition of the principles?
Yeah, or has it just all been thrown out? I mean, if Newton was around today,
I don't think it's been thrown out at all. I think it still applies. You may have to adjust the verbiage, but I think the principles are solid.
So you add all the science that's happened in the last 100 years.
You just correct the definition. You've got a low level of understanding, and then you gain a little understanding, and so that may change the definition of some things on the low understanding level, because, it didn't work quite like that, so it's got to work this way. And the next level, so you get a little deeper understanding, a little better steering, a little better grip on the wheel of comprehension. Yeah.
Well, I think mainly they're trying to talk about the influence of electromagnetism on the universe when they're talking about this principle of gender. So if we are talking about the influence of electromagnetism on physical reality today, given the change in our understanding of molecules and quantum physics and everything that we've learned in the last 100 years, I don't think that we would say that there is not an influence of electromagnetism on the universe. So I agree that that would still stick around. But what about these higher planes of existence? How does gender play in there? Are we talking about the interaction of electromagnetism on the spiritual plane, or is it like what we discussed before, where it's a higher vibration?
Whatever particular energies are used in the creation process on that level, that's probably what it refers to. Because it seems that the process of generation, creation, needs to have a male and a female process.
Or at least, in some ways, different forms.
Yeah, an interaction between the forms of, opposing energies to create the next thing the thing is trying to generate or destroy.
So at the origin, is there that distinction? If the all is everything, and the all contains this separation of genders or the separations of different forms, the ionic forms, at the origin, does that not dictate that there must be a duality? I mean, we talked about how the duality is just an expression of the spectrum, which meets in the middle and possibly meets at each end, if we think of it as the amoeba.
When the two become one.
Do they exist as separate things? I mean, is the God not a God, but two gods, which are expressions of different genders?
Well, that's a very good question. Well, maybe that's why there's always, in a lot of the old religions and philosophies, mystery schools or whatever, ancient cultures, or, I don't know what the best way to describe that is. All the old time guys, the guys that are before the now.
I think you're talking about religions that had many gods.
Oh, yeah. They always have a mother, a father, masculine, feminine, and those two create the child. Whatever the process is and whatever level of energetic interaction, it has masculine, feminine, child. It has to do those three things.
That's kind of the point that I was trying to make before, where I was saying, was that simply because in those ancient cultures, there was a limited understanding of the multiple types of genetic reproduction that exists? For example, a caveman did not know that there were amoebas that could reproduce asexually, or understand that funguses, many kinds of life reproduce asexually. And they think, well, the way I make a child is I have sex with a female who appears to be in some way different than me in her sexual dimorphism. So I'm attracted to that, and when we have sex, we have a child. So it must be the same in the plane of the gods, or in the plane of the angels, or in the plane of the origin of the universe. It must be like it is for me. And that means that there is a male and a female, and then that sort of, I don't want to call it primitive understanding. It's a different form of understanding that comes from a lack of knowledge, right? So,
A shallow understanding?
well, humans just have this tendency, if you look at the history of humans, and I think it's only normal. I mean, I think you can't blame them and say, haha, they were so stupid or something. It's just like
Dumbass Neanderthals.
whatever is
Dumbasses just riding around on fucking dinosaurs. Fucking stupid ass Neanderthals. Fled Flintstone motherfuckers over there.
These are completely different times. There were no dinosaurs at the time of Neanderthals. There's millions of years in between there, but the
No, it's really only like 3
concept
days. I don't think it's
of,
more.
say that again?
No, I think it's really just like 3 or 4 days. I don't think it's millions of years, man.
Well,
I think so. No, I'm just kidding.
you're clearly gaslighting me.
All right, go ahead. I'm taking us off track. Oh, totally.
I'm just saying it's that fallacy of self-reflection in one's attempt to describe the universe around them. It's the age-old risk of the ego. Man has an ego, and man wants to project his experience onto the universe around him. because he's trying to explain things that he can't understand. So
Yeah, or in the way he understands them there. I think that's part of my problem. That's how I try to explain things sometimes, and it does not come across very well, I feel like. But we're striving to do better, because Ted has been hitting me with that stick his mother beat him with. But it hadn't been a whole 5 hours yet, so thank God. It was just, 3 or 4 whacks, because that's discipline. 3 whacks is discipline, Ted. 5 hours? That's abuse. I mean, it's too late to turn her in for it now. She's 85 years old.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
one might argue that just 5 whacks is abuse.
I said 3.
Oh, yes, I was just saying, comparing 3 whacks to 5 hours. You could just say 3 whacks versus 5 whacks. Maybe 5 whacks is abuse.
4 whacks too many, man.
1 whack might be abuse if you're using a stick.
Hear that, parents? Wait, parents don't. Do parents discipline their children anymore? That's the question. What's going on with this world? Parents, why are you not beating your kids? Not like Ted's mother beat him for 5 hours. That's a bit extreme.
That's way extreme. I don't really think that beating your children is the best method of discipline.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to rub their nose in it. Wait, that's it. No.
I don't know when that's a good idea.
It wasn't a good joke. They'll edit it out. I'm sorry. You're right, Ted. You'll get that one out of there. That's not a good joke.
Again, we discussed this before. Buck Johnson may not laugh, but Buck Johnson understands the humor.
No. Yes. You have the dry, witty humor of a proper British intellectual. He's not British, though.
So there is this other chapter here where they talk about the difference of mental gender.
Wait a minute. There's only 7. Okay, well, that could be what we're trying to do. Why didn't you read that a while ago?
Well, I was just curious if you wanted to get into that because we had...
We'll just start this whole episode over.
I don't know if it's technically considered one of the 7 principles because it's really the 8th principle, but I think they're just trying to distinguish mental gender versus this concept.
Well, what's it say about mental gender? Maybe that'll help us extrapolate and understand the process.
Okay, so here's what it says, if you'd like me to read some of it.
Dive right in there. Yeah, splash around.
Students of psychology who have followed the modern trend of thought along the lines of mental phenomena are struck by the persistence of the dual mind idea, which has manifested itself so strongly during the past 10 or 15 years, and which has given rise to a number of plausible theories regarding the nature and constitution of these 2 minds. The late Thompson J. Hudson attained great popularity in 1893 by advancing his well-known theory of the objective and subjective minds, which he held existed in every individual. So I think they're talking about conscious and subconscious there, or the voluntary and involuntary minds, the active and passive minds, etc., etc.
Okay, one being masculine and one being female.
Then it says later, I'm trying to find where they tie this back to gender.
You really should have did all your reading beforehand, Buck. We're trying to run a professional show here. We're letting the audience down. Ted's mother is disappointed. She's going outside to get a willow branch because they hurt worse.
The student turns back the pages of occult history, and way back in the dim beginnings of occult teachings, he finds references to the ancient hermetic doctrine of the principle of gender on the mental plane, the manifestation of mental gender. And examining further, he finds that the ancient philosophy took cognizance of the phenomenon of the dual mind and accounted for it by the theory of mental gender. This idea of mental gender may be explained in just a few words to students who are familiar with the modern theories just alluded to. The masculine principle of mind corresponds to the so-called objective mind, or conscious mind, or voluntary mind, or active mind, etc., and the feminine principle of mind corresponds to the so-called subjective mind, subconscious mind, involuntary mind, or passive mind, etc. And it says, of course, the Hermetic teachings do not agree with the many modern theories regarding the nature of the two phases of mind, nor does it admit many of the facts claimed for the two respective aspects, some of the said theories and claims being very far-fetched and incapable of standing the test of experiment and demonstration.
Yeah, well, they failed the test of science before science had a real good name, In the beginning, people didn't really trust science,
Yeah, I mean, is it extremely misogynistic to think of the objective or conscious or voluntary or active mind being male and the subjective or subconscious or involuntary or passive mind being female? Is that misogynist or sexist, or are they saying that creation occurs in the female mind and so therefore creation comes from the subconscious or the involuntary mind? I don't know. I take issue with the concept of the male mind being the active mind versus the female mind being the subconscious mind. If you think about Western society in the 1890s, there was a heavily Judaic Christian bent concept of the male having dominion over his female and females being thought of as chattel or cattle or possessions of the man, and just like a homestead was the possession of a man. So I wonder if there's that influence here with mental gender.
I don't know. Could be. I'm not any kind of anologist from the early 1900s, Buck. I was not alive then. I am pretty old, but not that old. You're right, Dad.
But as far as male being active versus female being subconscious or involuntary.
Why don't we just look at it like seed and womb?
Well, let's talk about that. Explain.
Well, the feminine being the womb, the thought, the seed, the thought seed, the energy seed has to have a place to grow. So you just put it in the womb, put it in the feminine over there. I think maybe it's only described as masculine and feminine because those processes create an offspring and a child, a third party, a third thing.
That womb or whatever is the subconscious.
Yeah, that's where all the tools are, man. The tools of
The
creation.
womb of the subconscious comes the creative thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the matrix is. Yeah.
And then what is the active mind on the other side of that coin? The male representation or masculine of the active mind. Are those the expression of those thoughts through language, or the refining of those thoughts with the frontal cortex, or using the muscles to demonstrate the outcomes of those thoughts? What are they talking about when they talk about the active mind?
Yeah, the active mind sets it in action, sets the whole ball in motion, right?
What ball?
Whatever ball, man. What the fuck? It's just a goddamn dumbass analogy, and you keep trying to fucking... That's the problem here. That's the problem we're having with all of this. I got a little clippy. I didn't mean to get loud. I apologize. You're right, Ted. I'm sorry. Wasn't that you, Buck?
It's an analogy.
That's our problem. It's just the analogy they used at that time, and we can use 75 different fucking analogies for the same fucking thing. It's just like your feelings. How many emotions are there? There really aren't that many. There's about 75 fucking words to express a particular level of each individual emotion. There's what, 5 of them? Correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's just a stupid analogy to explain an extremely complicated process. And we're never going to have the right definitional words for it because we'll never have complete comprehension of it, I don't think. And we're just going to take baby steps through the thought, through whatever verbiage is handy for our current level of understanding.
Okay. Yeah, and I wasn't... If it seemed like I was questioning you, I was just trying to understand.
No, that's fine. I didn't know. I got mad at myself because I can't express it properly. See, my tongue gets in the way of my brain.
Well, it's easy to get frustrated when you're trying to express yourself about things like this that are so abstract or so undefinable. I mean, I asked that question because I struggle to find the separation between the subconscious and the active mind. I think of the subconscious or the involuntary mind as representations of our autonomic nervous system that controls like our heartbeat and our regulation of our breathing and the regulation of the different hormone systems in our body.
Yeah.
When I think of the subconscious mind, I think of this sort of metaphorical concept in psychology where it sort of talks about how there is this underlying thing that drives people. But I think more and more when we think about the gut microbiome, which I've mentioned several times, we were starting to realize this thing that we call the subconscious mind is maybe more heavily influenced by other microorganisms that live inside our bodies, which are not part of us, but in some way are uh, they're manifested in our own minds, like, the desires of the bacteria to have a certain amount of sugar or whatever influences our personality to have a sweet tooth or whatever. We might say, oh, that's just a part of his personality. He has a sweet tooth. And we might think of that as part of his subconscious mind when it's not really his mind at all. It's not even anybody's mind. It's just this manifestation of these bacteria in your stomach that really want to consume sugar. And certain species or certain levels of these different bacteria that live in your stomach will influence your behavior to make you want more sugar than another person. A lot of different things we're finding exist that way. And so I'm wondering if this idea of this sort of subconscious mind is going away in some ways. There's certainly a part of your mind that is working when you're asleep. And there's certainly a part of your mind that's working when you're focused on a different activity. Like if you're driving and you're
It's
not.
just the background operations of the operation system itself, right?
Well, yeah, but it's different to that too, right? I mean, as you're driving along, if you have some sort of problem that you've been trying to solve for like a week and you can't think of the solution for it at work or whatever, or maybe you're creating something new. And sometimes people think of ideas when they're taking a shower or when they're driving their car or whatever. If your mind is focused on something different, I often will have a revelation. I'll be like, oh, I finally thought of this idea that I was trying to think of, or something I was trying to remember, or whatever. And I think of that as my subconscious mind. But I don't understand the idea of ascribing a gender to it because, I don't know, this concept of gender, it's changing in our current society. And I wonder if that's, a lot of people are like, well, the ascription of definite genders is no longer real. It was always just a metaphor or just a simile that was used to neatly categorize people. And somehow it got intertwined with these ideas of morality and spirituality. But it depends on the specific society that you're in. There are many different societies, and many different societies have always thought of there being multiple genders, not just two genders. And this concept of gender fluidity or gender on a spectrum, which I think the idea of fluidity it portrays the wrong concept. It portrays gender as this sort of wishy-washy thing that might flow back and forth based on the gravitational pull of the vessel that the gender is in or whatever. But I don't really think that's true. I think what they're trying to say is when they say gender fluid, they're really talking about it being on a spectrum, or they're really talking about how what we think of as gender is really more of like an enculturated concept. What is male and what is female really has a lot more to do with we want to put things in these nice, neat boxes in society because it's easier to make clothes for people if it's
Either one or the other,
fits some sort of particular pattern. Yeah, I mean, we forget in America, our society is so based on capitalism, which is so based on this idea of rapid manufacturing and rapid dispersal. That's where, the Industrial Revolution really changed a lot of these different ideas into this form of duality, which I don't think necessarily existed before the Industrial Revolution. I think things were much more open before that. Maybe not when it comes to gender or the conscious or subconscious mind, but I certainly think that we like to put things in boxes because that seems to do well with our sense of peace in the world. I don't know. I have a hard time with the idea of the active mind from the subconscious mind and how that would have anything to do with gender. But thanks for listening to my long-winded explanation.
No problem. No problem. That's what we do here on the Buck Johnson Show.
Hey, man, you asked me to be on your podcast.
I know. We tease, we kid. We hit you with a stick.
Please don't hit me with a stick anymore, Ted. Even though it's a virtual stick, it still hurts.
Maybe it's just the act of creating a thing and putting it into motion. Maybe that's masculine, feminine of it. Who knows? Maybe somebody will soon, and they'll come by with crayons and explain it to us.
Maybe so.
If we're lucky.
We're lucky. So we have talked a little bit about the principle of gender. Do you feel like we've done a better job?
No, I think we've about beat that bitch to death, right? I'm sorry. We have flogged that horse. We have beaten it half to death. Well, we have beaten a dead horse half to death once over again and 3 times on Monday. I think we've said all we can say about the principle of gender, and probably some stuff we probably shouldn't have said, honestly.
Yeah, we probably could have left all that out about Ted and his mom and their abusive relationship.
Well, I think really that's why people tune in to the show. They don't like me or you. They just tune in for Ted.
Well, it's certainly one of the most entertaining parts of the show each week.
Last time, no, that was a different guest. He was juggling razors.
Ted was juggling razors?
Well, yeah, well, they were glass bottles. He had glued razors all over them, and he was juggling them. I don't know why. I got weird staff members, man.
Just in a drunken rage, or was he creating weaponry?
I've never juggled in a drunken rage, have you? Maybe he was just having fun.
I've never really been in a drunken rage, so I don't know.
Oh, well.
Never had that experience.
Well, be glad. They have a tendency to end up in handcuffs that way. Violence never solves anything.
I agree. Violence never solves anything, and alcohol never solves anything either.
We've pretty much covered all of the principles of Hermeticism. That was all 7 of them. I feel like we did a half-assed job of explaining all of them. Ted agrees. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the program. Thank you for joining us here this evening on the Blind Alchemy Podcast. We're grateful to have you every time you stop by. That chair over there, that's Woody's chair. You weren't here this week, Woody. No, you're right, Ted. There is no Woody. Whatever time you're finding yourself with us, thank you for being here. Thank you, Buck Johnson, for being here. Buck Johnson is our residential armchair philosopher.
Again, I resent the idea of being an armchair philosopher, but I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I feel like we've gotten very close over these last few weeks discussing these principles, and it's an honor and a treasure to be just a part of the discussion. So thank you, Blind Alchemist.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate that. As usual, ladies, gentlemen, germs, folks, energy, waves, and particles, both genders. You like what I did there, Ted? Yeah.
Or multiple genders, if you don't ascribe to a specific gender.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Hit us up on our socials. Check us out. We're not doing a real good job of keeping that up either because, lack of discipline again. We got to find an intern. I know you're right, Ted. I do have a lot of interns over here. But keep in mind, they are unpaid, and it is a revolving door. A lot of turnover here. Because, nobody wants to do this shit for free. And I'm only doing it for free because, well, I've got nothing better to do. And honestly, these are the things I want to go through my day trying to figure out. I don't want to be a wage slave, as it were. I don't want to help the matrix build itself. I want to break free of the programming. I want to let the spirit drive the car. And I hope that you do too, and I hope that's why you're here. Thank you once again, Buck, Ted, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you later.
We would love to receive your feedback and your questions for advice. Please email us or send us a voicemail. Our address is theblindalchemypodcast@gmail.com. Find, like, review, subscribe, and contact us on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and YouTube at The Blind Alchemy Podcast. All one word. Please subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player. We are available on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Anchor.fm/The Blind Alchemy Podcast. Please tell all your friends, enemies, and any strangers to listen to our podcast. This will help us bring joy to everyone. Text-to-speech services were provided by freetts.com and readloud.net. We would like to extend a special thank you to the world's greatest musicians, sound designers, and engineers at Hairline Productions for their help with the composition, performance, editing, production, and recording of both the original music and today's show. Please like their content on SoundCloud.